I'm going to try this once more here. I'm thinking maybe what was happening was that when I go to the tab to read the email, all the bandwidth is being allocated to the tab I'm looking at and not the live streaming tab. I'm hoping that's what's going on. But I can watch it here. I'll just keep this tab open. What I did is I copied and pasted the email to another computer so I don't have to actually go to another tab. But anyway, so I'll go and begin. I'll try to rehash a few things here since it's not included in this, obviously. It's in the other videos. So getting started a little late. I do have some notes here I'm going to be referring to just to kind of help myself out here. Don't want it to devolve into a rant and just try to keep it at a ramble, I guess. So let's see here. Just trying this again. I see a couple viewers there. And let's see. It looks like one of them already left. One's back. But I'm thinking what was happening was that when I would go over to the tab to read the email, that's when it kicked out. And so I'm just going to keep this tab open. And I copied and pasted the email somewhere else so I don't have to open up the tab. But we'll see if that's a problem or not. Anyway, go ahead and start here again. I didn't promote this anywhere on Facebook. I just, put up the couple days in advance that this would be going live. I figured I didn't want to get too much interest and have a lot of unruly chats. And let me, in fact, make the screen where I can actually see the chat. I had it minimized a little bit here. Probably not any chat, but yeah. Give me a second here, just adjusting my screen. All right. So the main purpose here, I'm just going to, like the title says, we're going to look at an email that I sent off to Dr. Meldrum, and then, as I thought would be the case, he dismisses his tendency to dismiss structures. And we'll talk about other critics of structures. I've seen some other, videos on YouTube that talk about, almost all structures have to be built by humans. Well, that's an opinion, and maybe it's a good opinion, but mine's a little bit different. So we'll go ahead and talk about that. But first, I just wanted to talk about the email I sent off to Dr. Meldrum. And I thought that was a good place to start, at least to have something to talk about when I'm going live. I guess shooting the breeze is kind of nice too, but, I thought I would just go for this. So, okay, so I do have the email here, and I'm just going to read it. This is what I sent off to him. Okay, hello, Dr. Meldrum, and let me know if the audio is okay or not. I'm assuming it is. If I need to speak closer to the mic, let me know. But anyway, if not, I'll just proceed. Looks like there's 3 people trying to watch at least. All right. Hello, Dr. Meldrum. I realize you're not a big stick structure proponent, meaning there is not a lot of definitive scientific evidence that Sasquatch regularly produces those. However, since you are a respected Sasquatch proponent in the scientific community, I wanted to take a moment and run this by you. In addition, I think you have mentioned the possibility of smaller Sasquatch nests in the past. I imagine you consistently have a lot on your plate, so I will try to make this brief. Sometimes I and others come across what we have been referring to as an homage tree or homage tree in the forest. Meaning multiple dead trees are precisely laid up into a large live tree. I feel lots of structures could be man-made, but to my judgment, these type of constructions seem to fall in between what an individual. Sorry, it's kind of hard. Let me get over here. Individual human with no heavy equipment and what nature by hazard would normally be capable of producing. Do you have any thoughts on such phenomena? Below, I have linked to an amateur video taken by myself that shows one such structure. It shows 7 dead trunks positioned so they are all converging on the top of one single live tree. This was in the mountains between what is known as American Fork Canyon and the Alpine Loop near Mount Timpanogos in Utah. Thank you for reviewing this message, Brother Meldrum. And in parentheses, no offense meant by not referring to you as doctor. I just hear you are LDS and so am I. That's a religious thing there. Thought it's worth, trying to take our commonalities and proceed from a place where we maybe are not enemies. Anyway, the video below, I also wrote here, the video below should automatically start at 16 minutes and 44 seconds. Just in case it is not, that is the point at which the tree configuration I mentioned in the previous paragraph becomes visible. Let's see. Okay, good. It's still live. Visible. Thanks for your time and for reviewing this message. Don't feel obligated to reply back, but if you get a chance, of course, you're more than welcome to do so. And then I have the link to the video. If anybody's interested in that, I could try to find the title, but I just have the link right here for the moment. Excuse me. Then he replies back. Again, it's very brief, but he didn't have to reply back, and I'm glad he did. And that's one reason why let me just say for a minute here. One reason why I sat on this for quite a while. He sent this actually last February of 2019, and I didn't want to just make it sound like I'm being very critical of him. So anyway, that's not really the goal here. Okay, so here's what he replied. Thanks for sharing, but when I consider it in the context of the landscape, there are dead standing snags and deadfall all about. I don't see much distinctive about what has become the focus of your attention. I will take a closer look and chew on it a bit. ... So he did, didn't have to reply. It's nice he did. I think he's a decent person, and he did say at the end that he left the door open that he would take a closer look and chew on it a bit. I don't know if he was just trying to be nice. I'm assuming that's probably just what he's doing there, but didn't want to appear at least completely closed-minded. And he signs it, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, PhD, Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Department of Biological Sciences, Idaho State University, and so on and so forth. Let me see something here. I was just joking when I'm trying to interject a little humor here, not to spread hate, just the opposite, actually. But I thought when I was reading this long, description of his title, I was thinking maybe we should add in lecturer and godfather of the current pop culture Sasquatch paradigm and keeper of the gate of knowledge. But anyway, that's just my humor, but I don't know if anybody, not meant to be disrespectful. But anyway, here we see, I'm reading my notes here because I wanted it, again, not to have it be a complete rant. I want to have some structure to what I'm saying. It probably will still be a ramble, but here's a comment. Let me just go to the chat here real quick. I have to, 1 second here. I have to, it's cut off a little bit, so I'm just trying to, 1 moment. Oh. I don't want to, completely ignore the chat, but I have this whole script here kind of stuff I'm going to say. But audio is great. Okay, great. That's good to hear. Wow, that's a structure, all right. Yeah, I thought it was. I thought, now this is a structure that, the one I sent him, the example, it's something that obviously humans aren't going to be able to just take these 7, trunks of trees, not just sticks. And also nature, it's kind of, I forgot to mention, I reply back to him as well. And so here's what I replied back. Thanks for the reply, Dr. Meldrum. Well, I do agree that there is much deadfall out there. Still, I find it a higher likelihood than usual that there was some non-natural or intelligent arrangement done for a total of 7 trunks to be lined up in one tree. If it were 1 or 2, which is common, I could see your point more clearly. Anyway, that's all from me. Have a pleasant weekend, sir. And that's how I ended, and he does not reply to that. So anyway, I wanted to pick something that it was, nature I don't think is going to have 7 trunks lined up in one tree. I mean, his thoughts were there's so much other deadfall there that, hey, it happened, but through nature. And then I replied back, well, I think it's less likely because, there's maybe some intelligent arrangement going on because there's 7 trunks there. And I think it's out of the question that humans would do that. So I want to pick something that's in between the two, and that was his response. So that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more, delve into the reasoning behind my conclusion versus his conclusion, and other people who criticize, they're more critically analytical, I guess, of structures. And let me look at my notes here. Sorry, I'm going to be looking off to the side here because, like I said, and you're welcome to, give your 2 cents in the chat. Looks like there's up to 7 people here. Let me get a sip of water. Excuse me, I tend to get a dry throat sometimes. Um, so anyway, like I said, he left the door open for a little bit for contemplation, though he's probably just trying to be nice in the email. And like I said, he didn't have to reply. I think he, I tend to think he replied because I tried to send him a reasonably nice letter, and it's good that he took the time to offer a brief reply. Obviously, he's a scientist, since science requires evidence that would be could be examined in a lab. He's pretty much hamstrung as far as what he can do and proclaim. So for that reason, well, I think it's pretty, in my opinion, it's pretty desperate to appeal to science in order to prove Sasquatch. It's all we kind of have as humans, and um, I've heard it said that Dr. Meldrum has faced ridicule because he's even placed his tenure in jeopardy because even just for his narrow acceptance of the evidence for Sasquatch. So again, I don't think there's need to hold anybody's breath, when it comes to scientists being able to promote useful information to further Sasquatch research. That's just my opinion. Let me see what else here I had. Referring to my notes. A few more thoughts here. So some might say I'm pro-structure because that's all I have to peddle on my channel. Well, it's probably a somewhat fair criticism. I still think structures, like we just talked about, are the work of Sasquatch at least some of the time, and it's impossible to determine the exact percentage. At least in Utah, the structures could be either, Sasquatch or human. It's difficult to know which is responsible. Sorry, I'm reading here. But I tend to look at things that make them more haphazard and non-standard, almost nest-like compared to humans, and some don't offer good shelter. I think everybody who's familiar with structures knows all that. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know. So what percentage? My guess would be more or less half, but of those that either Sasquatch or nature, that's of what humans and Sasquatch, might be responsible for. Then the other end of it, what Sasquatch and nature might be responsible for. Again, somewhere between half and more or less. I just don't know. I mean, it's anybody's guess, really. But let me see here. It seems easier to tell what would be impossible for nature to do versus Sasquatch. So, if you have, like I said, the 7 trunks up in a tree, I think it's less likely, at least, that nature is going to do that. Let me see here. I talk about how I hesitated to do this because I didn't want to come across as a spreader of hate or recruiter of haters. But I'm just still trying to make a point, like anybody else, that there are critics of structures. A recent one I saw, and again, I guess I will name a couple names here. There's Leon and Bigfoot of Okanagan. Bigfoot Okanagan is a channel. You're happy to go over there and sign up and be you look at his videos. He has some good stuff, but we do disagree about structures. He put up a recent one that said 99% of structures are made by humans. Well, that may be, but again, I think it's still an opinion. There's no way to clinically prove that 99% are made by humans. And anyways, a little more incredulous than I am. Let me see. Here's 4 more of my notes. Anybody's welcome to jump into the. Oh, here's this comment. Too heavy to be man-made, and it's entwined intelligently. Yeah, things like that. It's too heavy for man. It's too complex for nature. Those I think, are a pretty good bet that something's going on as far as natural. Intelligence arrangement, not something natural. Let's see here. I'm talking more of my notes here. I don't want to seem small-minded and mean. Let's see. Let's see. Let me skip over some of this. I already said that. I said that. Okay, let's talk. And I'm going to talk actually about Christopher Noel here later too. I think we are on the same page and more as far as structures, but I'm not sure if and just because our backgrounds are different, I don't agree with his the way I can see why he's doing it, why he wants to do the demonstrating in Washington. What else is there left to do, really? But I don't know, just not my inclination to do. And anyway, we'll talk about that later. But let's talk about Bigfoot Okanagan. And if anybody wants me to talk more about Dr. Meldrum, let me know. But so anyway, one thing here. I do want to say before I get into this first, I don't know where I have my notes, but I have met Leon and Bigfoot Okanagan. I think he's a good man, a good person. He came down in his travels last year to Utah. He was doing actually, I guess, Sasquatch kind of research. And anyway, he has some good thoughts. He's well educated. Like Christopher Noel, he's also well educated. Both of them actually don't get along online. They kind of, even though they're both educated, they actually have different opinions. So I've watched that online. It's kind of interesting. And Christopher Noel, was interviewed by him. He was gracious enough to offer me an interview on his channel, which is Impossible Visits. So anyway, I don't have a personal beef with him. I don't agree with his politics. But that's half the people on the internet. You're not going to agree with their politics. The country's pretty much split 50-50. So we're just going to keep it to Sasquatch here. But okay, let me get down to it here. And I'm going to refer to my notes again here. So obviously, Bigfoot Okanagan, he thinks he's right that 99% of structures are made by humans. And I give it to him for taking a kind of unpopular position because he thinks he's right. I have to say, probably, like I said earlier, closely to 50%, at least here in Utah, and maybe 25%. So when I say 50%, 50% might be man-made, the other 50% might be nature. And then maybe of that 50%, there's 25% that's made by Sasquatch, or maybe 50, I just don't know. I think it's higher though than 99%, or 1% made by Sasquatch is what I'm getting at and saying here. So anyway, we have a differing perspective or opinion. Leon's background differs. That causes him to think different about it. I don't fault him for it. You can tell structure geeks get under his skin, even though he does a good job of being thoughtful and easygoing while still being clear about his position. And it's kind of like my estimation of those who see Sasquatch in every smudge or shadow in a blown up image. I find it kind of preposterous. I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but I can't blame people for trying to see them, wanting to see them in, online photos or any photos. And that's not the problem. I just don't see what they are seeing and think most of those are inconclusive at best and almost always pareidolia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. No. Anyway, if there's any certain uncertainty to be had. So I could say Leon's doubting Thomas type when it comes to structures, like I am when it comes to Sasquatch, blob squatch, smudge shadows. So anyway, I can understand it. Any chat here. Let's see. Good work, Indiana Bigfoot. Let's see. A lot to discover. Oh, I'm behind in the chat here. Yeah, a lot of doubters do have to have experience to believe. Yeah, and I know for a fact that Leon has seen Sasquatch. At least that's what he's said, and that probably has made him a believer in that. But he has not seen Sasquatch physically put something on a structure, so he doubts that. And there's room for doubt. I'm sure. I would assume probably there's more humans doing it than I'm willing to admit or think. But I, again, don't think it's 1% Sasquatch. So anyway, I was just reading Doris Alvarez's comment there and just responding to that. Let's see, look at my notes here. 75 of 100 are Bigfoot. Yeah, and I'm in Utah, that may be. I mean, in some places they don't even have structures, and I think some people in areas that don't have structures get kind of maybe jealous that we have so many here in Utah, and they might, I don't know if that's a big thing, but fortunately, I don't. If I had the opportunity to have lots of tracks and vocalizations, I would put that up. But don't get a lot of that here in Utah. They're very quiet. They're pretty close to humans. Even the forests we do have are sandwiched by desert and pretty close to humans. So I tend to be pretty quiet. Anyway, let's see here. And that was a response to Jimmy Johnson's comment. Bigfoot Whispers Hub says, what do you feel the structures mean? Yeah, that's another huge can of worms. I could probably do another whole go live about that. I'm glad it's staying live here. It's not petering out this time. But yeah, I'll just give a handful of possibilities. I mean, I don't know, obviously, but it's all opinion, conjecture, whatever you want to call it. But some things I've heard are, maybe the younger ones like to just dare one another and put it by a campsite, a human campsite. Maybe it's like a hazing initiation. Again, that's just one possibility. Maybe it's preposterous and it's not true. I don't know. It sounds interesting to me. Another thought is that they put them near campsites because that's an area where there's not hunting done, and that makes sense to me as well. Because here in Utah, they tend to the structures that look more man-made are near human camp areas, and that's why a lot of people think, well, it's just humans doing it. Well, again, some of these are really weird-looking things, and if you go over to Rob Robles' channel, in fact, his channel is named Rob Robles, just his name. I've been out with him a few times, and he interviews or keeps tabs on different camp hosts in a certain area. And these structures always are appearing just overnight, and they never catch any humans doing them. And then he puts up webcams to try to catch somebody in the act, either human or Sasquatch. And then all of a sudden there's no more activity. Just the building of it completely stops. And he does see humans interacting with them. Usually they're just looking at the structure. They're kids playing hide and go seek around the structure. They're humans pulling things out for firewood, but he's never caught humans actually building the structures, just like we haven't caught Sasquatch, but they appear overnight. So that's really strange that humans would, construct them overnight in something that's so, heavy and complex. And you'd think it would take all year to build some of these structures. And anyway, so that's just another example. I'd recommend going over to his channel. In fact, he recently put up I was going to mention in my notes here, he recently put up a video where he goes through the differences he's finding between what he considers are probably human structures and Sasquatch structures. Some of those might be the very few, if any, sawed pieces of wood. Things I think we're all familiar with. Not a lot of tying with knots. There may be some cordage kind of laid on it or wrapped around, possibly. It looks more nest-like. It's not something that looks comfortable. Anyway, I'm getting rambling. You said, what are the structures mean? Some other things, they could be territorial markers. I've had some that we feel might be those. Again, we're just anybody's guess. Some of them could be actually for the young in winter to weather. In winter, they look like some of them would offer a shelter in the snow. Some of them might be for that. Rob thinks that some of them, the female Sasquatches use them for their young, and they put them by the campsites, human campsites, because there's no hunting allowed there. So that's another possibility. And again, we don't know. I'm sure there's other theories out there. Those are just a few. Let me know what you think of that, and what do you think they're for? What they mean. Some of them might be, I don't know, might even be to try to draw humans in, just to kind of, watch children play, or maybe they, I don't know, it's a peace offering to humans. I mean, we just don't know what they're for, really. Maybe they think that they put them in a place where they know they're going to be mistaken for human structures, so they feel more at ease at doing it and just want to show off, kind of. It seems like, at least in Utah, where we get further out where there's no humans are going to go, you get structures, but they're more haphazard, and maybe a lot of them are just nature, but some of them are still more complex, and you can't figure out how naturally it would have happened. But it seems like they're not showing off for humans or something. Again, this is just a human thinking. Maybe their thought process is completely different. Okay, let me get back here to my notes. I'm happy to respond to any questions, like I just did there. I get a sip of water. Bear with me a moment. Thanks for your patience. Okay. So I kind of draw an analogy here. It's kind of like when you have a piece of flint. Was it broken by nature, or do you have enough conchoidal fractures working on it to denote human fashioning of the stone? So, of course, in the case of Sasquatch, there's two possibilities: man or Sasquatch doing the work, and it become murky as to where Sasquatch capabilities and predilections begin and end. And when it comes to organizing wood, where man's tendencies may or may not lie when it comes to how much time they would actually spend making anything elaborate, with high frequency of examples. So anyway, that's a thought there I had on it. Christopher Noel, like I mentioned his name earlier, he talks about the probability of structures being made by Sasquatch as increasing if you have documented vocal activity in the same area, and I tend to agree. Also, you have, like I mentioned here, Rob Robles. You have the case he surveyed areas where he's keeping. I actually already mentioned all this, but I'll just kind of recap it quickly. He keeps tabs of camp posts, and they've lived there from April through October 24/7. They're up there in the mountains. And they report that the structures are mysteriously, at least in this area, appearing the next day overnight. And Rob puts out his cameras. He never has once caught human making them, only disassembling them for firewood. This same area has been visited by other squatchers such as Nathan Rio and Kevin Fremont. I noticed that Rob has put up a great video recently where he enumerates the differences he's finding between Sasquatch structures versus suspected human structures in his area. And that one's entitled, let me see. Well, anyway, I direct you to his YouTube channel. His channel is entitled Rob Robles, and has an icon of him as a little kid dressed as a cowboy in black and white. And that particular video was entitled Comparing Man-Made Structures to Sasquatch Structures, and it's dated January 12th, 2020 is when he put it up. So just about a little more than a week ago. And let's talk about Nathan Rio. In the same vein, who will deny that Nathan Rio's helped out, I say, untold numbers of people pinpoint how to more efficiently look for Sasquatch by just following structures in swaths of corridors to have encounters with Sasquatch. Maybe someone who is not familiar with that could deny that, the association between the two, and have just not and experiences people have had who previously looked for years with little luck to even just hear Sasquatch. Mark Witten's told me before he ran into Rio, he, ever since he's small, he's been looking for Sasquatch, but he's never even so much heard as a whoop. But he start looking, for these structures, and all of a sudden he's hearing whoops, and he's actually seeing prints. And so I think there is something between the two. Let's see here. I'm going to read my notes again. Anyone who is not making full use of that revolutionary tactic, meaning looking for structures, is totally behind the curve, to say the very least. It's akin to living in the Dark Ages and proclaiming that the Earth is the center of the solar system and the sun revolves around it. Like, I'm obviously being hyperbolic here. I'm exaggerating, but like stars watching without telescopes or only having access to the crudest handmade examples from the 18th century. It's like bloodletting to dispel fever and cure diseases. I don't know about that, but anyway, I don't want to get carried away, but you see my point. Of course, this is true in my area. In some areas, as you get further to the southeast, it seems that structure activity is less customary and it trails off in frequency. So anyway, that's my thoughts there. Get another sip of water. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Christopher Noel. So I like him as a person, and at least how he presents himself online. Like I said, I don't agree with his politics, but roughly anyone on the internet, half the nation, you're not going to agree with someone on politics. I'm not particularly enthused about his approach to stake out Washington, mainly because I'm doubtful it'll have promising results. But, I still salute him for trying. Someone never tried something just because they had doubts. Not much would get done in the world. So, in my humble estimation, though, relying on science to prove Sasquatch is desperate enough, and relying on the government is even more desperate. But what can you do? So, I hope it works out. More power to him for trying it. Just not my thing. Hopefully, couldn't hurt. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second, though. Since I consider world governments kind of as participating kind of as devil's advocate sometimes, I'm going to paint a worst case scenario if Sasquatch becomes public knowledge. I recently came across something online called UN Agenda 2030 Decoded. And if you go to naturalnews.com, I guess if you run a search for 2030 Agenda United Nations Global Enslavement, come up with that. Unfortunately, I can't, when I'm live here, I can't show you the link or anything. But number 11, it says, anyway, it occurs to me that the official acknowledgement of Sasquatch could be just one more step towards, quote, here's the quote, criminalizing living in most rural areas, forcing humans into densely packed, tightly controlled cities where they are under 24/7 surveillance and subject to easy manipulation by government. So anyway, if that happens, be careful what you wish for, since the powers that be will often use any developments to your disadvantage and even detriment. That's just my opinion, obviously. And that's just painting a worst case scenario. Hope none of that happens. Anyway, there must be something very important that they want to conceal if they will do so, even when such knowledge could be twisted and used to further their globalist agendas. So that's just my thoughts on this. I mean, if somebody has a comment on that, you're welcome to, you know, dissent from that comment. I mean, obviously, I'm just throwing something out here. Let's see here. But anyway, it's pretty much musings of an average person here. I'm probably not as bright as a gentleman I discussed here, namely Meldrum, Leon, Dr. Meldrum, I guess, Leon, Christopher, Rio, Mark, but it's still my honest opinion nonetheless. And everyone has an opinion, and it seems no two are exactly alike. Anyway, most don't agree with what everyone has to say, and I always say no one cares much about someone else's opinion unless it happens to correspond with their own, and I'm sure my opinion is no exception to that. And let's see, any other thoughts here? Anyway, that's pretty much what I had to say. I don't plan on doing a whole lot of more criticisms of, other Sasquatch enthusiasts, investigators, thinkers, researchers, but I thought it'd be worth using this topic as a discussion for going live, a live session. I don't want to fall in the trap of just promoting only criticism of other squatchers instead of working with them. And like I said, to be sure, I've worked with a little bit, at least with some of the individuals in some sense of the word. Christopher Noel, like I said, he was gracious enough to interview me. I met Leon in person in his travels to the USA last year. He's a Canadian, and I have no personal contempt for them. I have not met Dr. Meldrum and don't really plan to, but of course, we had a very brief email exchange. And I encourage others to only offer constructive criticism, and for the most part, just not worry too much about the, quote, Sasquatch community, unquote. But anyway, I made that one exception here. Anybody have any other thoughts? We could shoot the breeze for a second. There's our 5 people here if they haven't fallen asleep. But anyway, otherwise, have a good evening, everyone. It's been 30 minutes. I guess usually people go live for about an hour. Anybody have any questions about what's Rio doing and all that? Unfortunately, I don't have much of an answer for that. I bore you, but sometimes I get that question. Okay, well, I guess that's pretty much it, unless someone has some long tirade they want to direct to me in the chat and tell me, call me out or something. Or but anyway, just my thoughts. I'm not trying to criticize individuals. I'm just giving an opinion and where it differs from some other people, just to a certain extent. I think some people probably agree with me, but anyway. Okay, I guess I don't have much else to add, so hope everybody has a great Saturday evening, wherever you are, and thanks for participating. Well, I'm trying to end the stream, but it's kind of slow here. Here we go.